Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome back. What I wanted to talk to you guys about is something that I have been struggling with since I moved into this apartment, and that is shooting in this room during the daytime. Now, obviously I could flip the camera around and have that window be my light, but I really want you guys to see what's outside, and you can't because it's just so bright. It's just not a great configuration for filming. So I started thinking today, like, what could I do to make it so that I can see outside? And that's when I came up with the idea of this. This is something that you need in your kit right away. This is a circular ND filter. What is a circular ND filter, you say? Let's find out. All right, so this is a circular ND filter. What it is it's like sunglasses for your camera. You can actually rotate the rings on this circular ND filter, and that raises and lowers the brightness. So why would you need something like this? You're probably asking, why can't you just decrease the f-stop like this? All right, so I've now decreased the f-stop to an f16 from an f1.4. While you can see outside, you cannot see me. So what could I do? I have to add a bunch of light to my face, and I can totally do that. I have a giant light to my right, and I'm gonna raise it up, and it's not that much. You still can't see me very well. But the other problem is that, like, everything's in focus now, and I think that is super lame. I really like that shallow depth of field that shooting in an f1.4 on the GH5 gets me. So I'm gonna go back to the f1.4. We're gonna put this circular ND filter on the camera. It screws on. This is a 62mm circular ND filter. I'm using the 12mm f1.4 Leica Lumix lens, and 62mm fits that. The 12 to 60 Lumix lens also works with a 62mm thread. You can use the same ND filter on both lenses, which is super handy. By the way, this is a Tiffin variable ND filter. It's pretty standard. You can find them on Amazon. I'll put a link below. One quick disclaimer is a lot of people are gonna tell you not to use these to shoot video. They're really designed for still photography, and that is true. As I'm rotating it, you might see some weird, like, flubby stuff in there, and that's what they're telling you to avoid. But my argument is, if you're doing interview style stuff like I'm doing right now, or run and gun stuff, who cares? It looks cool sometimes. I'm gonna rotate this thing, and you can see now I can darken my room without changing my f-stop. I still have the same problem, which is that I am really dark and the background is now in key. It's hard to beat the sun, but I can guarantee you guys that I'm still got the same wonderful shallow depth of field at an f1.4. And that is the #1 reason why I use this circular ND filter all the time. It's also really great for photography, and just getting, like, even on wider lenses and stuff like that, being able to shoot wide open, you just get like such a more dynamic image. They're not that expensive. I wanna say it's like $100 or something like that. Definitely worth it to get one of these. But our problem is not solved. How are we gonna get both of us to expose properly? Both of us being me and my friend, the background there. I guess I could put tint in my windows, but that's pretty complicated and I don't have that. I'm gonna have to find a way to set my exposure to work for the background, add enough light to my face, and use the right shooting format on this camera to capture it all and be able to, like, control it in post. So in order to do that, I am now going to switch to Vlog. All right, guys, I'm guessing this footage looks pretty different right now. For starters, Vlog on the GH5 will up your minimum ISO to 400. Do I have a furry friend? Do I have a furry friend? Oh, look at this. Look who came to be in my video, you guys. This is my cat, Snake. He really hates being held right now, but he was pawing me. He's about to rip me to pieces. Okay, Snake, all right. Oh, Snake. Oh, damn. Okay, well, now that I am in excruciating pain, let's keep going. Thanks, Snake. The first thing I wanna do again is I'm gonna use this ND filter to set my background. So I'm gonna rotate this, and I wanna bring it down so that my background is just inside of 80 IRE. When you shoot in Vlog, you can only go up to 80 IRE in a waveform. You can actually just see it. It's like as the sticks move up the waveform, they flatten out. And you just want to pull it down until nothing is flat anymore. I am going to raise this light up all the way. This side of my face is coming in at about 42 IRE, which is actually key. That's actually good in log. That's where you want Caucasian skin to be. The moral of the story is, using a log format like Vlog, I'm able to retain more highlights and also more darks. I mean, that's literally what log stuff does, is it smushes and compresses everything into a smaller container. What I was shooting in before was Cineleg D, and that is already like applying a curve. It's already dropping a lot of blacks and clipping out a bunch of whites. Not what I want to do when I'm trying to retain a wide gamut. I'm gonna bring this footage into Premiere now and talk about taking that log footage and making it work and seeing if this even works. Let's take a look. All right, guys, so I've just brought that footage that I shot into Adobe Premiere, and as you can see, this is the first piece of footage that I shot here in Cineleg D. The background's just no bueno. It's super overexposed. You can see in the waveform monitor here, those flat lines up top. Flat lines in waveforms generally mean clipped or bad, and so if I bring down this curve here, you can see that those flat lines stay flat because that information is gone and everything just gets murky. So we went on a journey to try and fix this. So here we are looking at the log footage, and I know if you're not familiar with log, you're like, man, that looks super weird and flat and murky, but that is exactly what it's supposed to look like. But what's exciting to me is the math of it all. If I look at this waveform here, there's no flat lines, like nothing is clipping, right? Nothing is getting lost. So all the information's here. It's just a question of like massaging and kneading it so that it looks good. I'm gonna break this into two pieces of footage just so we can try two different experiments. The first is gonna be like the traditional way, which is using what's called an input LUT. An input LUT is basically like a preset color curve. In this case, I'm using one that was actually designed by Panasonic. It added a little bit of contrast to the footage. The good news is this LUT didn't get rid of anything. There's still nothing clipping, because sometimes you have to be careful with LUTs. Sometimes the LUTs can actually clip your footage and you can lose information. But in this case, it looks like it's just added some contrast and some saturation, which means I can go into my curves, which is going to be my weapon of choice for this, and I'm going to mess around with this curve and see if I can bend this footage to my will. I want to lower my blacks so they're touching 0, and I'm going to take my whites and I'm actually going to bring them up until we're just touching. It's okay if we clip a little bit, but I just want to get as much as I can out of the whites. Now I'm going to take my gamma, which is my mids, and I'm going to bring everything way up. And yes, it's going to look like things are clipping, but that's okay. I'm just going to try and get my face, which is this guy right here, up to that 70 mark. Right there. Now everything looks pretty contrasty, so we still got some work to do. So I'm gonna see what I can do. Let's try bringing this down here. Just trying to smush everything in a little bit, but while still keeping that sky. I might have to go a little darker on my face. Maybe bring a little bit of the blacks back in. Here's kind of like a base curve. The sky's a little white out there, but look how much more information in general I have out there. Like you can see the fountain and stuff. Here, let me play this. Look. You can see the fountain going on out there. I really want to go into my color wheels and maybe add a little bit of blue to the darks, maybe the midtones too, or like just back away from magenta. There's just a lot of magenta, so I'm gonna add a little cyan, maybe warm up the highlights just a little bit. That looks better. That looks a little bit better to me. And you can also kind of, as a secondary, you can go in here and again just play around with, you can play around with the gamma and the darkness and stuff here, and I can bring up everything a little bit. This actually has kind of a nice little like washed out vibe to it that I don't mind. But hey, look, that's not that's better than I thought it would be for the notoriously not so good GH5 LUT. But we went from that to that, but most importantly, we're going from that where we just like literally don't have anything out there to that where we now have a nice background. This feels a lot more cinematic to me. Option number 2 is not using a LUT and just using the curves from the beginning. A lot of people are going to advise against this because math, blah, 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 but I don't know. Sometimes I like to build my own curves. So I'm just going to start in the curves, and I'm going to do the same thing I did, but I'm starting with the raw footage. So I'm going to bring my blacks all the way down and my whites all the way up like that, and my gamma again, and we're just going to kind of build that curve. It's not looking great yet. All right, so this is not bad. Because I built this from scratch, in addition to just the luminance curve, those LUTs add like, they add some color and stuff like that. So now I have to do a little bit more work in the color aspect of things. So I can go into my shadows and maybe a little blue, just kind of playing around here, just winging it, trying to come up with the look. I think I'm gonna go into creative actually and add a little bit of saturation to my skin, throw some cool off those shadows, maybe warm up those highlights a little bit. And that doesn't look too bad either. So the LUT gave me this more sort of like skip bleachy, a little more high contrast look. And this is a little bit more of a bronzy look. You know, maybe too much of a bronzy look. Let me cool it off. There we go. So yeah, that is it. I am very pleased with this experiment. I'm gonna go back and sum it up. Except for my cat trying to kill me, which he does like 2 or 3 times a day. Other than that, I think that was really successful. The interesting thing in doing this experiment is, for whatever reason, the preview on my little monitor over here to the right on this camera doesn't look good. So I had to completely rely on the waveform to pull this off, which is where learning things like that does come in handy. You can't always rely on a monitor. That being said, I have got one of those small HD Focus 5-inch monitors coming in the mail. It's gonna be here tomorrow, I hope, and I'm really excited to test that out because I think it'll even give me like more creative ability to do things like this. All right, well that about wraps it up for this. I will have a link to that circular ND filter down below. I know it's kind of like rebellious to use a Circ ND for all you pros out there, but I urge you to try it with these Micro Four Thirds cameras. It works. The aperture light, I'll have a link for that. You need good lights to pull this stuff off. You do need that V-Log. It makes a huge difference in this case, so unfortunately you have to unlock that unless you're using the GH5S where V-Log is actually included, so that's a win for the GH5S. I hope this information has been really useful to you guys. As always, if you like this video, hit the sub button, tell your friends, hit like. I think that's about it. See you guys later. Peace.